Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So we continue our journey with the Meccan Quran, learning Iman by way of the Meccan Quran. So we're in the third session thus far, and today we're covering Surah al Layl. Surah al Layl, it consists of 21 ayat of the Quran, and there's really no differences amongst the scholars with regard to that, according to Imam al-Qurtubi, who was a scholar of the Quran from Al-Andalus, and Abu Amr al-Dani. Surah al-Layl, for the most part, for the majority of the scholars, is said to be revealed in Mecca. And we'll see by the themes of it that it deals with that reality. If we look to the introduction in the Clear Quran translation, it says this Meccan chapter emphasizes God's power to create and show the way, meaning guidance, and the people's ability to choose between good and evil, or right and wrong, or what's beneficial, what's harmful, and the consequences of each path, and the fact that the believers will be rewarded to their satisfaction is highlighted in this chapter of the Quran, Surah al Layl. It was revealed. Okay, so let's pause for a moment. So we have what we call Muratib al-Quran. We have levels with regard to how the Quran, we look at it. One way is how it was, the time that it was revealed in. It's called Tartib al-Nuzul. Tartib al-Nuzul, Nuzul means when it was revealed, right? Simply put. We don't know with exactitude on every occasion to say this surah was revealed before this with exactitude. We have an approximate knowledge. But as we mentioned before, Walaikum salam, as we mentioned before, Tartibun Nuzul, or the way that the Quran was revealed, right, is not the same way that we find it in the Mus'haf. Tartibul Tilawa, the way that we read it in the Mus'haf, right? So, of course, it's not obligatory upon you to know these differences, right? This is more of like when we start talking about education and we start talking about details in Islamic education, this is part of those details, right? So everybody doesn't have to know that, but it helps a lot because when you start to approach the Quran systematically, it gives you an easier path to understand it. And for the non-Arabic speaker and for the non-scholar, you have to have some general ideas about what's going on in order to make sense of it. Mm-hmm. And then the detailed stuff is left for those who are going deep into scholarship or whatever. But the general understanding has to be there. So we do have to have an understanding though that the Quran was revealed speaking to the people's situations. And that's a little bit different than the Quran, how we have it in the Mus'haf, and we have to make sense of it, right? By the order of it in the Mus'haf. That's important. That's just a serious commitment. And unfortunately, that's part of a serious commitment to study the Quran. Unfortunately, we don't have that. Now, if I were to go to a Pentecostal church and I was a pastor, or if I were to be in the Jehovah's Witnesses hall, then the whole congregation that's under me is studying, so on and so forth. We will all be studying the Bible, and we will all have our notebooks out, and we will all be taking. You see what I'm saying? But unfortunately, somewhere along the line, as Muslims, we've gotten away from that type of commitment to the Quran, right? And so you see that in some communities. In some communities, you don't. You know what I'm saying? In the English-speaking communities, that's very, at least in the Water Deen community, they're always, even if it's a translation, they're always looking at the Quran says, even if it's a translation, right? But the thing that's praiseworthy is the commitment to at least read the translation. So that's something that is important to understand, that we have to be serious in our community. So then you have the order of the Quran as it was revealed. You have the order of the Quran as it is read in the Mus'haf, and then you have the order of the Quran with regard to the subject or the theme that's taken up. So let's read in brief. Here it says, it, by the night when it covers, right? And the theme here is taking up Imam Mustafa Khattab. He gathered together 11 ayats, okay, 11 ayats in Surah al Layl, the first 11 ayat, and he put them under one theme: the faithful and the faithless, the qualities of those who have faith, and the qualities of those who don't have faith. Right? That's just a general understanding. So by the night when it covers, and the day when it shines, and by the one who created male and female, surely the end or the goals you strive for are different, are diverse. As for the one who is charitable, the one who's giving, mindful of Allah, and firmly believes in the end reward, we will facilitate for them. It shifts. First, the Quran here, the translation is indicating to the Quran is talking about Allah swearing by the night. And there's a reason for that. Then you begin to see that it's not only by the night, it's by the reality of creation, the creation of the human being, male and female. Just like there's night and day, there's male and female, right? And then it puts an emphasis on the paths that human beings take in regards to male and female. But it doesn't talk about the path directly. It talks about the end of the path, the goal. You see what I'm saying? ¿Qué está tratando de realizar con tus actos o tus hechos? ¿Qué tú quieres de la vida? In other words, right? And so that's the issue that comes up. And so then it shifts to say that, okay, out of those different paths that may exist out there, those who are giving, right? Those who are giving, those who are not just giving, because you could be giving, but those who are giving, but they're also conscious of Allah, right? They're conscious of Allah. And those who believe that doing good is rewarded, because remember the Meccan stage of the Dawah, we talk about principles of Dawah, the Meccan stage, what was the type of education that was being given to the people? It was belief in the unseen, belief that if you do good, it's rewarded, and good character. You see? Mm-hmm. So that's how the Muslims were developed. And not only that, on top of that, here's Allah swearing by the You see what I'm saying? This lesson is tied into that reality.
Because I was going to say, why the night? Why?
We're going to talk about that. But here is focusing on the night. Mm-hmm. And when you see the night, the lesson comes back to you. Allah is the one that created the night. Allah is the one that created the day. Allah is the one that created the moon. Allah is the one that created the sun and the stars. That's all where time is at. Shifting of time, the seasons, everything is tied into that reality. Human existence. You know, the Native Americans used to say that they live by how many moons, right? We as Muslims, we were heavily focused on the lunar calendar, right? So that's why in Ramadan there's all this emphasis of when the beginning of Ramadan is and the whole issue of the moon. So it comes back to the issue of our time on earth for us to be reflective about it. And that there's a greater reality that's operating above ourselves. Everyone has a limitation. You see what I'm saying? We all have the day of judgment together, but we all don't die at the same time. You see what I'm saying? We all are not born at the same time. And we all are responsible, even though we live, like right now, we're all together in the same existence, in the same, time period, in the same geography and everything. Even though we have different ages, different experiences, but we all make different choices. Even though we're guided, we are all Muslims and so on and so forth, and we're guided by Islam. At the end, we're all responsible for our choices and so on and so forth. Right? Hola, ¿cómo está?
I was wondering if my son can attend.
Yeah.
Try this time.
Okay. So we're talking about Surah al Layl. In this surah, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is swearing by the night. Some call this Surah Abu Bakr because Abu Bakr began to manifest or show good deeds and so on and so forth. Right? And so night was reflected, or night was representative of disbelief and bad character. Right? And so some of them looked at it like that, some of them were. So here Allah swears by the night and the day when it shines. And the day when it shines is also an indication of Islam or Iman becoming widespread in Mecca. See what I'm saying? Amongst the people. The people are in darkness, and then boom, the light starts to slowly shine. And that's what we find in Surah al-Duha. You know what I'm saying? And Surah al-Fajr and Surah al-Duha is showing this idea of light manifesting. So that's the light of Iman. But at the same time, the Quran is telling us to be conscious of time. Very precise, because the time of Fajr is not the time of Duha. Right? Duha is a little after Fajr, is before Dhuhr. Right? And then when we start talking about Layl, you can break that up. If you look at Maghrib and you look at Isha, those are different stages of the night. You see what I'm saying? So the Muslim, in this regard, is getting this Quranic teaching. Is getting this Quranic teaching, which is what? Which is making the Muslim conscious of time itself. So that's the idea that we want to understand is Surah al Layl, the meaning of it, right? In general, we want to get that. But we want to understand that the lessons that come here, and how what were these lessons and when did they come? These lessons came in the beginning, early in the beginning, right? That the Quran is coming to push us to reflect on the meaning of time and life, right? Of the reality that Allah created the male and the female, and the reality that life comes out of that, but at the same time, you know what I'm saying, life doesn't end. Life continues from this world to the next world. And so that means that in this world and in the next world, we are accountable. Right? We're accountable. So that accountability is the idea that we're accountable is being put in our minds. And that idea to think about what is the origin of life. It's not just the male-female relationship on the biological level, but the origin of life comes from Allah. Right? Allah is the one that gives life. And so then the question is, what type of life is it that people are living? And so here there's a lot of emphasis that's placed on the idea of those who they use their wealth in a bad way. They don't use it for good. They use it in a bad way. Surely the ends or the goals you strive for are diverse as human beings. As for the person who is charitable, mindful of Allah, and firmly believes in the finest reward, we will facilitate for them the way of ease. And the way of ease is the way to goodness and the way to Jannah, right? And as for the one who is stingy, or the one who doesn't give, who's not mindful of Allah, and denies the idea that good is rewarded, and money is tied into that. Why? Because we say this over and over again. You know, I say this over and over again in different situations. When you give money, cuando uno da algo, se parece que perdió, que no, ya no tiene. Si yo tengo 100 pesos en mi bolsillo, yo lo doy, no lo tengo en mi bolsillo, right? So if I have $100 in my pocket and I give it, I don't have it. But if I believe in the unseen, then I believe that is with Allah. I believe the reward is with Allah. See what I'm saying? I believe that good deed that I did, I didn't lose. In today's time, what is it that people say? Why should I do that? What am I getting out of it? You see what I'm saying? And you try to encourage them, do good. What am I getting out of it? Because they don't see that they're getting something out of it immediately. See what I'm saying? And so this is the teaching that the Quran is early on is embedded. There's a reward for goodness. But first you have to believe in goodness, and you have to believe that there's a reward, and you have to believe that Allah's rewarding. It's not only giving things, it's also good character. You know what I'm saying? It's being nice to each other. You see what I'm saying? It's also being courteous to each other, right? Being kind to each other. So the Quran and the early Dawah, in the early period, this is the way that they're learning Islam. It's not how we're learning Islam now. See what I'm saying? The way that we learn Islam is problematic because it's like these lessons are not with us. We don't see them as 100% important. See what I mean? And that's why you can have Muslims, they may say they believe in Allah, they may pray this, that, but something is missing when it comes to dealing with people. Something is missing tremendously. You can have a person talking about the Sunnah all day long, and they're the worst character. Has the worst character when it comes to dealing with people. No patience with people. You see what I'm saying? So on and so forth. And it's not necessarily their fault, right? It's that we've gotten away from the Quran as the foundation. And because we've gotten away from the Quran as the foundation, we don't have a foundation. We're just going by shakliyat, as we say in Arabic. Just by the way people look. You know what I'm saying? We look the part of being Muslim. But here the Quran is talking to us about the way of happiness and the way of misery in this world and the hereafter. And I'll give you an example. Doesn't it hurt when you're kind to people, but they reject that kindness? You see what I'm saying? Or when you show a person love, but they respond back with hate. You see what I'm saying?
That I don't like when people take my kindness for weakness.
And it hurts.
I don't like
and
when
it makes
people
you
take
think.
my kindness for weakness.
Yes, and it makes you think.
I don't like when people take my kindness for weakness. Oh, because you're doing something good.
Did you hear what she said?
Yes.
That she doesn't like when people take her kindness as weakness.
Or when some people, they see being humble as weakness.
Yeah. So okay, so that's just a natural response. But what about doing good? Don't you feel good when you do good?
Yes.
And if your conscience is sharp, like your sense of right or wrong is sharp, if you said something, you may think about it. And you may say, maybe I said something in the way I shouldn't have said it to that person. You may, and if you're at another level, you may go back and you may tell that person, I'm sorry, I didn't do that. Or you may try to correct it or whatever. You may not be that courageous to tell them, but you may try to do something. You may pray for them or whatever. That's if in your head you're working through that, that you're conscious, what am I doing? So that's what the idea is, that the Quran early on is embedding in the people this idea of doing good is rewarded and you're accountable for that. But it's encouraging the believers that don't get caught up in what everybody else is doing. You continue on this path of doing good because these people, they still have yet to understand reality. They have yet to understand their purpose in life. They have yet to understand what happens when they die. You see what I'm saying? They have yet to understand that they're going to be accountable. So then this section is left off with, and for the one who is stingy and is not, remembering Allah and denies the reward at the end, we will facilitate for them the path of hardship. The path of hardship ultimately is going to be Jahannam, right? And their wealth will be of no benefit to them when they go into the hellfire. In other words, then, all of the time that they spend accumulating wealth, and everybody's like, wow, this, that, but it has no benefit for them in the hereafter. It's unlike the person who give their wealth and then they have good deeds coming to them because of the good that they did. Right? Here, the emphasis is being placed on wealth. Okay, then now we go to another section. It's like 12 through 21, and then the surah is broken up into two parts. So the reward of the righteous and the wicked. It is certainly upon us alone to show the way to guidance. Guidance comes from Allah alone. It's not your opinion, my opinion. You see what I'm saying? There has to be some way that we have some clarity as to how to live in the world. Because, and you see this, everybody's debating about the meaning of life and the purpose of life. That's why you have multiple religions. You have all these ideas. You have people that even say, I'm not dealing with religion. See what I'm saying? I do my own thing. You have all these ideas in the world about how to live. And Allah mentioned that. That surely the ends you strive for are diverse. People strive for different things in life. Right? So then here it says, and so I have warned you of a raging fire, that there's consequences. Don't think that your time on the earth and the accumulation of wealth and this, that there's no consequences. Or don't think that you see people get away with things that there's no consequences. That's a different type of mindset. When people think that there's consequences, they change. You see what I'm saying? But Islam is not aiming to force people into believing those consequences. Islam is trying to encourage people from their own to use their minds to accept that as a reality, so that it's from the heart, sincere. And so this is a fire in which none will burn except the most wretched, who deny and turn away from guidance. But the righteous, this is where after the Quran is what is putting the fear into you, right? But the righteous, those who do good deeds, they will be spared from the fire. Those who donate some of their wealth to purify themselves, not in return to get somebody's favor, like you're buying somebody's favor, but to do good, which is a different state of the heart. And we all say that. We question sometimes. Are you doing that? What's the intention? What's the reason why you're doing that? You see what I'm saying? Why are you helping them? You see, we think that.
Because you just like somebody. This is too nice. It's scary.
Yeah, like are you trying to get something from me?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Somebody questioned me about why do I want to be friends with them?
But that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
people question.
Why not?
People question why other
it's
people.
Like, it's scary. It's almost scary when somebody, or you come off as too nice, and you're like, she's too nice. I don't want to.
We're too happy. They're like, what do you have to be happy for?
Yeah,
because I'm alive.
I'm happy to be alive. But if I won that Mega Million that's going on right now, if I was a gambler, I would donate that money. I wish I could. Just for one thing. The Powerball is in the billions.
Allah open up the door to this first. So then here it says that they give, right, not in return for someone's favors, but seeking the pleasure of Allah, right? Seeking the pleasure of their Rabb, the one that created them and guides them, takes care of them. That's the meaning of Rabb. And they will certainly be pleased. Okay, so that's the general translation of the surah. So let's look at this with a little more detail. So the surah we said is 21 ayat, according to most of the scholars. It was revealed in Mecca. It was revealed in the early period, right? You guys, can you make them first? So it was revealed in the earliest period of Mecca, right? And so during this time period, there were not many Muslims. During this time period, there were not many people who believed in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or in Islam in general, right? And in the Prophet Muhammad more specifically. as a prophet. They may have considered him as a nice person, so on and so forth. So this is the message that we're getting, right? The message that we're getting is that money and wealth overall, not just like money in that sense, but wealth overall, not in the sense of just cash, but wealth overall, it has value, right? But that value is limited if it's not accompanied by Iman. It's not going to help us, in the hereafter. It's not going to help us with the law. In other words, you can't buy happiness. You can't buy happiness. It may seem like you can buy happiness, you can buy things, but you can't buy happiness. The happiness that Allah wa ta'ala is talking to us about, it comes with belief in the unseen. It comes with belief in that which is permanent, which is Jannah. It becomes in belief that Allah is the one that guides and has created and made this life purposeful. Right? And we have to give ourselves a chance to experience that. Because a lot of times sometimes we're going through so much trauma and drama and everything that is difficult to benefit from our own faith. Right? So we have to be able to slow down somewhere and take it slow so that we can begin to learn to benefit. It's like a sick person when they're at the end of being sick and they start to eat food again. Food tastes nasty.
Mm-hmm.
It tastes nasty. It's not good. You know what I'm saying? It may even your stomach. You may have been used to not eating much, and you don't even have an appetite. But it takes a while for you to come to some sort of normality. It's the same thing with benefiting from faith. If we've been living in the world for so long, where meaning and hope and life, it hasn't really overtaken our heart, where it's really settled in our heart, where that's our lifestyle, we're battling between them. You know what I'm saying? And it gets worse when depression and everything is in there. That strangles hope. You know what I'm saying? And hope is necessary for faith. So the beginning of the dawah was this light, this idea of the light of Iman. Right? So this Surah al Layl was revealed after Surah al Layl, which just talks about who Allah is. And before Surah al-Fajr. And it was revealed like this when we find it in the Mus'haf. Actually, when we find it in the Mus'haf, in the written preservation of the Quran, the order is Surah al-Fajr, Surah al-Balad, Surah al-Shams, Surah al-Layl, and Surah al-Duha. So this surah comes in that series. Now, all of these subjects, all of these surahs have similar subjects, and the names have to do with the time of the day. But Surah al-Balad disrupts that order in the Mus'haf, right? Because Balad has to do with the place. It doesn't have to do with, for instance, the time of the day. But Fajr is the time of the day. Shams is, and then Shams is an indication of the sun itself, which has to do with time, has to do with light. Layl is the night time. Duha is that time between Fajr and Dhuhr. So the names of the chapters are related to each other, except that Surah al-Balad disrupts that flow. We have to begin to think about the Quran and how the Quran relates to each other, right? The names of these chapters, we ponder them, like, what is the significance of them, right? Because they're telling us something. So this surah itself, it opens by Allah swearing on the darkness of the night that overtakes the world, right? So it starts with the mention of the night, then the day, which is the opposite of the surah that comes before it, with Surah al-Shams. And it was revealed before Surah al-Shams. Right? So this surah starts talking about darkness. Surah al-Shams talks about light. And some of you were not here. And it's a reference to the light of Iman. So here the night is a reference to the darkness of disbelief and bad character, right? So Allah is swearing by the night, and we were mentioning this before too. So what happens is that with the way that the Quran is training our minds, when we look at night, when we look at day, when we look at the morning, when we look at the evening, we associate with it life and death, reward and punishment. Just the same way what we look at the summertime versus the wintertime. Wintertime reflects death. Summer reflects life. The transition from winter into summer, it represents resurrection. See what I'm saying? So the Quran, it instills in our minds ideas and values and concepts so that when we're looking at the world, it's reminding us about our existence in this world and our existence in the hereafter and what path we should take. See what I'm saying? So it's not just that we're getting guidance from the Quran so that we have ideas in our heads, but we're also getting guidance from the Quran so that when we not only are thinking, but when we're reflecting, not only we're thinking to ourselves about life, but when we're reflecting upon the creation itself gives us a message back. You get what I'm saying? There's because God created the world and it has meaning and created us. And at the same time, God revealed the Quran to guide us. Our minds have the ability to a certain extent to understand things without the guidance of the Quran, right? Because both have the same origin. We were created by God. The Quran was revealed by God. So the creation itself teaches us, but it's not enough to just reflect on the creation and think. Revelation is that which teaches us about the creation and which teaches us about ourselves, right? We need it. That's the whole concept of the prophets. So the symbolism is, that we're moving from darkness to light. And we mentioned this before. This surah was revealed during the time period when it was the beginning of the Dawah, when it was the beginning of the Muslims beginning to believe in the Prophet Muhammad and practice Islam. So it was an environment where most of the people were not believers. So if we think about this reality, we have the idea of the sun, right? Surah al-Shams. We said that this surah comes in order. Fajr, Surah al-Fajr, Surah al-Balad, Surah al-Shams, Layl, which is the surah that we're studying right now, the night, and then Duha. So if we think about this concept, we have the sun, we have Fajr, that when the sun first comes out, we have the idea of Duha, which is when the sun is reaching a point between the earliest part of the morning and the midday, and then we have Layl, which is the night, right? So there's this idea when we're looking at nature, like I mentioned before, right, where it's giving us this understanding of what's happening. And what's happening is multiple things. One is that the people are receiving the light of guidance, but also there's these paths. There's the path of those who believe and the path of those who don't believe. And the path of those who believe is the path of light, and the path of those who don't believe is the path of darkness. See what I'm saying? So that play on light and darkness is there. Surah al-Fajr in this. So when we look at the order of the Mus'haf, Surah al Layl, it comes in a series, and that series of chapters of the Quran give us different messages or teachings, right? And we already mentioned that the surah itself, it was revealed at the beginning of the Dawah. It was revealed at the time when there were not many Muslims, when the message of Islam was beginning to be received by a few people. And so those people had to be encouraged why they should believe and why they should do good deeds and so on and so forth, right? So if we look at the Mus'haf, the order of the chapter, Surah al Layl comes toward the end of the Mus'haf, toward the end of the Quran, right? And so there's a series of meanings that are coming to us. One, Surah al-Fajr comes. These surahs are all interconnected with each other. And it begins to talk about the problem of excessive love for wealth and consuming the inheritance of the orphan, right? How it is that wealth leads to oppression and not considering the rights of the poor. Then Surah al-Balad comes around talking about the need to use wealth to free the slave and to feed the needy, especially in a time where there's severe need. Then Surah al-Shams comes after that, and the Mus'haf, and it's talking about the different types of people, those who believe and those who don't believe, those two paths, right? And then we're getting the idea of those who receive their book in the right hand, those who receive the book in the left hand. Those who receive their book in the right hand are those who, are those who are successful. Those who receive their book in the left hand are those who have failed in their commitment to Allah. Those who receive their book in the right hand are those whose scale is weighty of good deeds. Those who receive their book in the left hand are those who the scale is weighty in bad deeds. Right? And so Surah al Layl, the objective, yani maqsood hadith surah, is to encourage us in obeying Allah and doing good deeds, and to discourage us to sin. After the series of messages that we get in the Mus'haf itself, that those who use their wealth in the bad way, those who don't care about the orphan, those who don't care about the poor, you see what I'm saying? Those people at the end, they're the people who are characteristic of darkness in the world. And those people who care about the poor, those people who use their wealth for justice, right? Those people who believe in the promise of Allah, then they represent light in the world. And then not only that, those are the people that despite what's happening in the world and it looks like that other side is gaining, those are the people that are on the path of goodness, because goodness has its own reward. That's the idea that the Quran is emphasizing, that goodness has a reward. So Surah al Layl is detailing now these two groups. Surah al Layl is detailing these two groups. And that's after the whole idea, for instance, that's after the whole idea that the Quran is teaching that those who purify themselves by good deeds, and those good deeds, is believing in Allah and sharing a wealth and having good character, that they're successful. The idea of the book is the idea of accountability and judgment. The idea of purification is the idea that it's a process in order for us to fill that book up. You see what I'm saying? And part of filling our book up so that we get it in our right hand, is that we have to make sure that our lives that we're doing good deeds. And not only doing good deeds, that we have those beliefs, like belief in goodness, belief in the unseen, belief in judgment, belief in God, right? Those things are the things that purify us. Our belief in the teachings of the Quran and Revelation and acting upon them. That's what purifies us. So overall, the core here is to separate between belief and unbelief, between goodness and that which is bad, right? So that there's some sort of standard. So this surah itself is an encouragement to take on those characters which lead to success or happiness, and as a discouragement from acquiring those characteristics or having those characteristics, right, which the Quran is condemning, like being stingy, like not having hope, not believing in Allah, right, being selfish, so on and so forth. So the two groups are separated out. So the first group has three characteristics. One, they have consciousness of Allah and they aim to please Allah. And the second characteristic is that they spend their wealth to do good. And the third characteristic is that they see good is good. They believe in it. The other group, they're stingy. They're neglectful of belief in Allah. And they don't make a distinction between good and bad. You see you have three characteristics for those who are the believers and three characteristics for those who are the disbelievers. Some scholars of tafsir, they move it from the personal level. What we just mentioned is a personal thing. It's like you have these characteristics, right? That type as individuals. Some scholars say, well, if we really think about the outcome of people having these characteristics, so if you have individuals that they're conscious of God, they aim to please God by doing good deeds, right? By believing in good, by believing in the unseen, that they're accountable for our deeds, then that creates a certain type of environment or society or people, so on and so forth. So they start to look at the characteristics as, okay, what do groups, what are the characteristics of groups? Does this group believe in God, believe in goodness? Do they give wealth? And in this case, we're focusing on wealth as a good deed. There's a lot of emphasis placed on that. We're not focusing on other deeds like making dua or salah. That's another conversation. Here is the issue of how is wealth used for goodness. That's the theme of the Quranic education for today in that regard. So then when you have a group of people like that, then the idea of justice can be established. Right? And when you have a group of people to the opposite, may not be established. It may be extremely problematic. You know what I'm saying? May not be established at all. Because it's very difficult to see that justice is going to be established when you have a society of individuals that are just greedy and don't care for the poor and the orphan. It's just impossible. See what I'm saying? And when people love money more than they love goodness, they're going to do whatever for that, whether it's killing or robbing, that type of thing.
I was going to say, what if the person don't have any money but they have wealth? Because I was looking at it as, okay, is it the wealth defined by money?
It's not. No, it's wealth in general.
Or like, I might have a house that's worth something, and
it's not just money.
It's just not just money.
No, it's wealth in general. It's wealth in general, the sharing and so on and so forth. But we simplify that to. That's why we use the word wealth. But we live in a society where money is such at the forefront. Yeah. So we just we're just emphasizing that point. You get that?
Yeah, I get
and
that.
then in other areas of Quranic teaching and in other areas of the teachings of the Sunnah, you're gonna find things like a smile, or for instance, accommodating people, or for instance, like there's an obstacle in the pathway, in the sidewalk, on the street, you remove it. All of that becomes part of good deeds. You see what I'm saying? Sharing food, and then there's levels to that. There's the idea of those who are extremely poor, and then there's the idea of back in the day, it used to be common, like your neighbor used to come to your house for salt. I remember that. I remember that. Salt and sugar and stuff like that. That went out the door. But the Quran in Surah al Layl talks about that type of basic sharing. You know what I'm saying? In life. Unfortunately, in this society, people do it in a different way. So, do you have a cigarette? I'm sorry, but it's true. They do that. They say that. So there's a sharing there, but it's not necessarily the sharing of the right thing. And you find that in some of those crowds, even, I hate to say it, but even when it comes to the issue of smoking marijuana, you know what I'm saying? They share. There's two things here. I say it seems funny, but we can't always condemn everything that people do. There's goodness. The sharing is good. It's the issue of what do you share? You see what I'm saying? We're not going to knock the fact that they're sharing. I mean, it gets to the point where they share needles. It gets to the point, you may think it's funny, but it's real. You know what I'm saying? It's a real situation. We have to acknowledge where good is at. We only condemn what needs to be condemned. We just don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. See what I'm saying? I use that as an example because for some people that hits home. For other people that doesn't make sense. They can't relate to that at all. But they can relate to, for instance, maybe sharing sugar with their neighbor or salt with their neighbor. You know what I'm saying? Or I know people that their neighbor comes to their house and they do house sitting, or pet sitting, or that type. You see what I'm saying? Those, that's where people now they're concerned with each other. Right? So at that level. So the surah, it starts off with this idea of considering the natural order, the idea of night and day, Allah swearing by it, and we mentioned how goodness, and evil, or the reward for doing good is symbolic in that. Then the surah clarifies the path to where joy is and the path to where misery is. And it alerts to that idea that how some people get caught in their wealth and they won't gain benefit from their wealth, in the hereafter. And more specifically, it was warning the people of Mecca regarding what was going to happen to them in the way that they were dealing, because they had the prophet amongst them. See what I'm saying? Where the prophet was teaching. And they know who the prophet was. That's one of the things that is very clear. And so it ends with this idea of a model of who the sound believer is. And the believer, والمؤمن الصالح, is the one that is conscious of Allah, aims to please Allah, believes in good as good, and more specifically, uses wealth for good. Uses wealth for good. Is there anything, anybody? We ended with that. So those are some of the lessons from Surah al Layl. So when we talk about the whole idea of da'wah for no Muslims, or even for renewing our faith for certain Muslims, this is what we need to focus on. Don't get caught up in a lot of the details which we had. Get focus on just the basics of seeking the pleasure of Allah, of doing good deeds, right? And in this case, here is a lot of emphasis placed on the issue of wealth. Especially in the time period where we find people losing their jobs, we find people struggling, find food very expensive, gas very expensive. See what I'm saying? This makes it makes sense, huh?
I said the rent heights.
Yeah, the rent heights. You know what I'm saying? So that the issue of sharing wealth, is part of Iman. You know what I'm saying? It's one of the characteristics, of the believers. Does anybody have anything to comment on or say or share?
Well, I just want to say that, it actually hits home because today I shared my meal with one of my coworkers. I cooked extra, and I said, "Hey, do you want, she's like, yeah." And then, I say, "I'm going to the mosque. Do you need a ride home?" Because she lives in 63, so 63rd Street. So, it's good to know that, I got 2 good deeds today.
So what do you all think about this approach? Like taking this is a new approach we started, towards the class.
I like this. In the video. It's very interesting because it points so much and reminds us what we have to do as Muslims, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects from us. And I don't know, it's a very good chapter because it reminds us to be good. It reminds us why we're here. And it's very important because sometimes as a sisters or brothers or Ummah, we forgot to approach when somebody needs us.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's a big one.
That's why you don't understand.
I enjoy this on a personal level. It helps me to rediscover the Quran. And I'm like, wow, subhanAllah, so many years, of being Muslim, and then it's like sometimes we overlook these things, like their relation with the Quran, and I've taken different approaches. I've done the classes and the studying the books, and
That's a lot of things, but it's it's hard to explain.
I enjoyed it because I was able to follow along and
this
understand
translation,
was.
the clear Quran translation, is not always accurate in everything, but the organization of the chapters. The organization of the chapters is amazing. It helps facilitate the study. But it's not always accurate in every single thing. But the general meaning is on point. See what I'm saying? And it gives you a framework for studying. That's why we started to use it more and more. And it has become one of the more dominant translations. And also the English is more accessible for people. Because mostly all of the English translations is not accessible. Another thing is that the Spanish translation used to not have the same order as the English translation called the Clear Quran. But now the newest Spanish edition has the same thing, where they give you an introduction to the surah, and then they break up the surah into different temas. Sí.
Porque tiene la explicación abajo.
Right.
Hay ciertas palabras que tú no las entiendes, puedes ir abajo y está.
Te da detalle. Ya te da detalles.
Hay unas cosas que están como turbias, que no captas, entonces ya cuando vas abajo y ves lo que significa y te dice, por ejemplo, explica en qué sura y por qué esto, por qué lo otro, por qué.
Pero ese es como gente como usted, que quieren estudiar.
Yeah, for my algebra course, that was perfect because I would use my the English one, and then I would go back to the Hispanic one. He was amazing for that.
I'm gonna say something to you. Some
Because I'm
people
not going with the Quran like to finish it fast. I go with the Quran like
to sit with it,
understand
to understand
you
the
read.
meaning. I'm gonna say something to you. What I found on a personal level, some people may not agree with me, but the Spanish language translation is closer to the Arabic than the
Yes, that's what I noticed. That's the
because the language,
yes,
the language,
very rich.
the language is
Spanish.
more. The language is more. American English is not even the real English,
Yeah.
right? And so we have changed a lot of meanings. Whereas the Spanish, it still has to go back to the land, and it has Arabic in it. So sometimes it's easier to capture some of the meanings of the Quran. And I found that throughout the years, even when I used to study the Arabic Spanish dictionary when I was in Egypt, and I used to study the English Arabic dictionary, I used to see the differences. See what I'm saying? So it's helpful, but still, again, with the way that this is organized, it makes it so much more easy to study the Quran. I myself, I'm a proponent of the thematic tafsir of the Quran. And yo a mí me gusta bastante estudiar el Corán por temas,
Yes.
¿verdad? Por el sistema de temas, buscándole el tema principal al capítulo del Corán y los otros temas que apoyan ese tema principal. That facilitates for us. Or else what happens is you get stuck just looking at ayat for ayat, and you're like, okay, what do I get out of this?
That's what I was doing. I was just reading. I'm like, I don't know what anything means. And then somebody was like, oh, no, you have to read the commentary. And I'm like, what is that? I don't know anything about that. I was like, I need a class where
that's
I can
the
just...
part about the other books that I taught you. Because it explains in the beginning of the surah, it explains what the surah is about.
Right, and that's
what I like.
And this is for Dawah. This is what we need. When we're doing Dawah, this is what we need. We need to be able
and explain you, for example, if, why the Prophet was a Muslim, for example, why they moved away, why the other people got like punished and then this and remind you this and remind you that. It gives a lot of like explanation.
That's is important from the Dawah side, that we're able to summarize those points, but also when we talk to the people and they begin to learn that, because sometimes we just give them a translation or we tell them Quran and Sunnah, but that's confusing. We have to teach them that there is that background, is important for them to understand it. You know what I'm saying? If not, they will get a lot of misunderstanding, especially when it comes to like Surah al Tawbah and so on and so forth. Because Surah al Tawbah heavily focuses on, it's a surah that really focuses on chastising the disbelievers from the people of Quraysh. And so if they don't have a background to that, they're going to say, well, all disbelievers, we should deal with them harshly and so on and so forth. And that's a misunderstanding of the Quran. Without that background, we can have a distortion. We talked about that a little bit in the class that we have, Muslim non-Muslim relations. Some Quranic insights to that. But that's important, the background, inshallah. So with that, we end. Assalamu alaikum.
When I was